Hi, everyone. You are listening to the Let's Live with Alexandria Fraser podcast. I am your host, Alexandria Fraser, and today we have a very special guest and we will be talking about mental health. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Houseman, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I have my own private practice in the state of Michigan, and I also do a lot of public speaking. And I had a podcast of my own back in the day, and doing everything I can to spread the word about living healthy mentally. So, thanks for having me.
Yeah, could you repeat your name one more time? I don't know if it cut out or not.
Oh, yeah, I think there was a bit of a delay, but my name is Kelly Houseman, and I am a licensed professional counselor.
Awesome. So I originally saw Kelly at the Seen Women's, what is it, like woman, just women's event, right?
Yep.
And that was awesome. I loved what she had to say. So I was definitely inspired to bring her onto the podcast. So
Thank you. I'm
of
so glad you got
course.
to come.
Thank you. My first question that I kind of want to get into, since I feel like mental health is something that people neglect to talk about, and I think it's getting more and more popular to talk about. And I do see that with both men and women, especially with men. I feel like it's not talked about enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's such a bummer. So I think, how did you kind of? I want to know how you got inspired to talk about it, especially when it was so kind of like taboo to talk about back, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's what's always inspired me. Even I think to kind of our parents' generation, no one ever talked about going to therapy. If you did, that meant you were crazy and something was severely wrong with you. Most of our parents would never even think of going to therapy, although most of them should be in therapy. And so I had some experiences with therapy of my own as a teenager, and that really inspired me because it was life-changing, and just the power of being able to share your story with someone and kind of work through some of the tough things in life. I knew that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so after grad school, I opened up my own private practice, and I've kind of dedicated my life to, as you said, making it comfortable to talk about going to therapy and setting goals and working through some traumas and all of that stuff to kind of make it less taboo and just more normal conversation.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. And I think your platform has definitely been very inspiring. And I love what you do on Instagram and everything because it just
Thank you.
really helps. Of
I try.
course.
I try. There's a lot out there on social media. It can be a tough world sometimes. So I think any kind of, little boost that I can give someone is amazing. So thanks.
Of course. And what can, honestly, anybody, so from kids from a young age to teenagers to people in their adult life and, even older than 50, what can they all do to keep their mental health in check and sort of check in with themselves periodically? And yeah, we can get into like more of that too.
Sure. Yeah. So I know for me personally and a lot of my clients, the worst thing I can do for my mental health is keep stuff bottled up. I know the moments in my life where I have just felt like I was losing it and spiraling, most of the time is when I was just keeping everything inside. I wasn't talking it through either with a friend, a family member, or my therapist. So really the best thing I can say is talk to someone. We are here as therapists to talk non-judgmentally. We have truly heard everything. So I always recommend therapy. But if you don't want to go to therapy, at least talking it through with, a supportive friend, a supportive non-judgmental family member, just getting it out of your head and kind of into the world can be tremendously helpful. And clearly there is such power in talk therapy. That's what I do for a career. So definitely that. And then also, like you mentioned, kind of just checking in with yourself, because a lot of times we don't really check in until it's too late, until we're having a panic attack, a total mental breakdown, we're yelling and screaming at someone and we're like, oh my gosh, I feel like a monster. So kind of checking in with yourself, daily, like, how am I doing today? What's bothering me? What can I do different tomorrow to make my life a little bit better and more productive? And just, noticing kind of the feelings coming up in your body before it gets to that explosion point.
Absolutely. I love that. And are there like certain small habits that you recommend to your clients as well as things that you can just do on a daily basis? I know like talking to people, or like for me right now, I'm at college. So sometimes like if my friends at school or we're at the library, we'll be talking, but then we really got to study for that big exam coming up. So are there anything that you recommend doing individually?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just kind of giving yourself a little bit of a break. Probably the biggest thing that I can say is just being really mindful of what you're consuming on social media, because before you know it, and I am guilty of it too, we can spend hours a day, like just scrolling through social stuff, and it might be triggering us in ways that we had no idea. Like if we're comparing our body to someone else's, or, feeling like, oh my gosh, I am so far behind. This person's so beautiful and successful. And like, it's really tearing ourselves down. Just being aware again, like what are we consuming and how much time are we spending on it? That can be a huge one. And even if you take back like 15 minutes of that time to do something that like you should be doing, whether it's like homework or working out, or some people are really into like journaling, working out, whatever, kind of taking back some of that time. But yeah, I think really being aware of what you're consuming every day is a huge, huge thing, especially lately. And I am guilty too. So the work in
Yeah.
progress.
And do you think journaling is very helpful for some people?
Yeah. Some people are into it. I think there's people who really, they like to either type, and sometimes too, you don't even have to write it down in a journal. Sometimes just even getting stuff down in the notes app in your phone can be enough, or, typing or writing it down. That can be really cathartic for some people. Other people are like, oh my God, the thought of journaling makes me want to puke. So it's like not for them, but a lot of people definitely do that. A lot of clients too are like into meditation. Like you can find even a 5-minute meditation app on, YouTube or whatever, or just getting outside for a 5-minute walk, anything to kind of just like calm you down a little bit is always helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And what are like the worst things that we can do to sort of like, I don't know what the word could be, but make ourselves more stressed, either like hurt our mental health even more, and make all those healthy habits that we do build up just kind of, in a sense, not go to waste, but sort of take away from that.
So you're asking kind of what habits do, like negative habits?
Yeah, what can we like stay away from?
Oh, sure. Yes. So definitely, I think overcommitting is a really big thing. And again, that's something I'm guilty of. If someone asks me to do something, almost my gut reaction is to be like, yes, I will. Sure. I will help you out. I will attend this event. I will meet up with you. But in reality, I don't really have the time or desire to do that. So I think even pausing before we commit to stuff and making sure that we really want to do it and kind of have the bandwidth to do it is really big. And noticing like self-destructive habits. Some people, when they're anxious, they will binge eat. Or some people will, miss out on sleep because they're staying up all night doing homework or studying for an exam. Like kind of just noticing, like, are there any unhealthy habits that you are doing, when you are anxious or sad, they're not healthy for you, that are not benefiting you and moving you forward. And then kind of noticing like, okay, what can I do a little bit differently now?
Awesome. Yeah, and you said something about binge eating,
Mhm.
and how can people kind of break that habit? I know that's a very difficult habit to break, or not.
Mhm.
It's more so, yeah, just, I mean, I know I've struggled with it a little bit in the past.
Mhm. Yeah.
So how can somebody kind of eliminate those tendencies?
Sure. Yeah. So I think being really, first of all, like being aware that you're even doing it. Like some people, again, they don't notice it, but I think identifying your triggers, like, okay, when I am stressed, I tend to eat an entire bag of chips or all the cookies. So yeah, identifying that is a good thing. And then really kind of bringing more mindfulness into eating. I often suggest when you are eating, not really multitasking, because part of the problem too is we're doing a bunch of stuff, we're shoving food in our mouth. And also with the binge eating, that's where therapy comes in and can be really awesome, because truly, it's called eating your feelings and trying to figure out like, okay, what is triggering me to eat? Is it borderlining on an eating disorder? So that's all the kind of stuff that we can help people figure out with in therapy, especially if it's gotten to the point where it's pretty destructive. But yeah, it's super common. Again, like I know when I am stressed or tired, the first thing I do is reach for junk food. So even something that I've had to really, really be mindful of, and then kind of asking myself, all right, how do I feel after I eat that? Because, during the time we're just like, okay, donuts, cookies, I feel better. But then afterwards, you're almost always we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ate that. I can't believe I did that. So I think it's really important to identify your triggers before it happens and kind of learning your patterns and healthier ways to cope with it.
I love that. Absolutely. And does that kind of go with other eating disorders as well, sort of like identifying it and then act accordingly and then get the help that you need if it needs to
Yeah,
be?
absolutely. And especially too, that kind of relates to social media as well. A lot of times we'll see these girls who look like perfect on Instagram, and that can often result in restrictive eating or some kind of eating disorders to try to obtain this unattainable image. So yeah, and I think just again being aware of, okay, are my eating habits healthy for me? Are they nourishing my body, or is it harming me kind of physically and mentally? And then definitely, if it's kind of trending down the other way, we can certainly help with that. And that's a physical and mental thing too. So it's really important to take care of our body and mind, especially with eating disorders.
Absolutely. And kind of, I think like alongside too, because I know in the past for me, like what has triggered, I would say, sort of disordered eating for myself would be like when I'm exercising a lot or trying to look a certain way.
Yep.
Um, so I guess my first question is, does exercise have a positive or negative effect like on our brain health?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And almost every single client I work with, I really, especially my clients that are having depression, there's been studies that have shown that exercise can be almost equal to antidepressants in helping people with mental health. So I almost always try to get my clients into some kind of exercise program because it is so healthy, again, for our minds, for our bodies, taking care of ourselves. So yeah, that workout is important. But I also know that sometimes on days when you are feeling depressed and you can barely get out of bed, it's very difficult to just go to the gym or to work out. So it can be really cyclic too. And again, if it's something like that, talking to a therapist so we can figure out how to get people moving forward is really important. But yeah, trying to work out, a couple of days a week, whatever works for you, doing something that you enjoy is going to help your physical and mental health, those endorphins, and it just feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And sort of how can we work out and have a healthy balance between that and like being super obsessive with it?
hmm And that's definitely, it can be a slippery slope for a lot of people, especially like you had mentioned, if we're trying to obtain some kind of specific body image, making sure first of all that that's realistic for our body type. Like, can I realistically look like this? And then what is it actually going to take to look like this? Am I willing to do this? And I always say too, like, trying to work out not necessarily to look like someone. It's great to have motivation, but I think too, like, realizing like I am trying to have a healthy body, so I can achieve my goals, kind of focusing more on that because it can definitely it can be a good motivator, but it can also be kind of a deterrent too. Like you said, like, oh, we have a lot of clients that over exercise or they punish themselves by exercising. And that's certainly not the goal that we want here.
That's awesome. And I'm glad that you brought said that as well because you don't want to like punish yourself because I found that like back more so when I was in high school, like if I had like a cookie or something, I'd always be like, oh my gosh, it's a bad food. I have to work out for 6 hours and
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be dangerous. Yeah. And again, it should be kind of, I don't know if it's ever going to be a reward for some people. It's, some people don't like it, but definitely, not using it as a punishment. And I think too, a lot of our feelings on food being good or bad kind of come down to like messages we were told in childhood and stuff like that. So there's so much that goes into our thoughts on eating, and yeah, it's all connected.
yeah. And so sleep as well. I know that like I'm always told, especially so I play rugby at here at my school. And so I'm always told like, oh, athletes, like you need to get sleep, like prioritize it. But once I was like off of I after I quit running, I was off of a sport for about 6 months. So I just didn't know like do I does like this still apply? But of course, like in my head, I'm like, yeah, sleep is important. But how important do you think it truly is?
Oh gosh, as a mom of a 7-year-old who still doesn't sleep through the night, I will tell you it is extremely important. Clearly, I haven't slept in years, so you can function without it, but I absolutely personally know the detrimental effects. Like, think about when you have lack of sleep, like, everything's affected. Like, we're more angry, we don't have motivation, we just don't have the energy to do stuff. So trying to get more sleep, I know it's difficult. Like, most of us are in school or we have jobs or families or, commitments or sports. So it is very difficult, but trying to get some good sleep, it is so, so important for mental health because yeah. And even that's tied into eating too. Like, people that don't get good sleep often kind of overeat or won't eat. So it's all tied in.
Okay. And so sorry, back to food. um are there some foods that you recommend for people who maybe are struggling with, their mental health? I'm guessing you're going to say try to stay away from like the junk and ultra processed foods.
Yeah, yeah. And I get it. Like, again, I totally get it. Like, when I'm tired, I reach for a candy bar, and there's a lot of candy in the house because it was just Halloween. There's been a lot of research with like omegas. So trying to get foods that are kind of rich in omegas. There's some links to brain health with that. I always say just do the best you can. Because if we're aiming for this perfect diet, like it's never going to happen. And then the problem is, okay, if we don't eat perfect for one meal or if we have one snack, it's like, okay, forget it. I'm just not doing this at all. So I think that's really important to just kind of set your bar that's something attainable and do the best you can with eating. Don't, go crazy. Don't set unrealistic expectations, but do the best you can. Yeah, try to eat as many fruits and vegetables. I mean, look, like even if eating healthier for you is like drinking one more glass of water or eating one single fruit or one single vegetable a day, like start somewhere, start really small and do the best you can.
I love that. And I think that it's super important for like people my age to hear that because I mean, I know a lot of people that I've talked to in the past have said like they try to stick to like the strict plan and then if they, their whole day is based around that and that I think in itself is very self-destructive.
Yeah, yeah, and we want to be attainable, or else we give up, we get frustrated, we quit, and so we want to just do something that's realistic and yeah, that's readily available.
And what would you say like are your things that you would recommend to someone like me to do on a daily basis, whether it's like food, sleep, sort of like I don't know if you wanted to give like an itinerary from myself, someone who I'm doing rugby, but it's more of like a club and we're in the off season right now. However, I'm studying a lot,
Yeah.
trying to get in exercising, sort of all of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think scheduling can be really good, but again, oftentimes we overschedule. So making sure you're scheduling some downtime because oftentimes we are waking up, we are like go go go, and then our head hits the pillow. We're like, oh my god, I didn't have time to have any downtime. And again, yeah, it kind of just comes down to like doing the best you can and checking in with yourself every so often on like, okay, am I happy with my life right now? Like asking yourself that and not in a judgmental way, but just being like, okay, how was this past week? Okay, it was extremely stressful. I barely survived. All right, why was it like that? And what are some things that I can do next week to maybe take some of that pressure off of me? So I love learning from stuff and not beating myself up. Like, okay, if I had a really bad week, why was it bad? And what can I do differently instead of like, oh my God, this was the worst week ever. I'm such a horrible person. I have to learn from what is not working so that I can figure out what's working. And that's what I would say for, college students, for you, just periodically kind of check in and say like, all right, what's working with my life? What's not working? And what can I make some changes? What can I do more of? What can I do less of to just get that balance? We want to get you balanced and kind of, not up and down all the time, but like trying to be somewhat balanced is the goal.
Absolutely. That's really cool that you said that too, because I find like a lot of times I always will be like, oh, like I went on my phone too much today, but like this,
Yeah.
this, and this, where I just feel
Mhm.
like it's not helpful for me. It makes me more upset and down on myself.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, like we're always so judgmental and kind of mean to ourselves, like, oh my God, I'm so mad at myself. And I think changing the way we talk a little bit as opposed to like, all right, I was on my phone a ton today. It prevented me from whatever it is that prevented you. Tomorrow I want to do, 5 minutes less on the phone and do something else instead. So again, kind of just being more gentle with ourselves and learning and doing different.
Yeah. And speaking of our phones, do you find, I don't know if like you heard research, but even personally, do you find there's like a connection with probably like people struggling with mental health as well as going on their phone too much or even like not just their phone, like social media, like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it may be?
For sure, yeah. Because I've had clients, and again myself too. Like they're spending like 8, 9 hours a day on their phone. And look, like I am a mom of two. Like sometimes I just need an escape, and like Instagram is a great escape from reality, or like I can go watch a video on YouTube or whatever it is. Like I need my phone. I will probably never be able to give up my phone, and I would never ask someone to like unless they want to do a phone detox. Like it's not realistic. So I think again really just being aware, like, okay, when I am scrolling Instagram, how am I feeling? Am I comparing myself to accounts? And then like checking in, like, okay, do I even need to be following these accounts? Even if it's a friend, even if it's a family member, if it's bringing up really strong feelings, maybe unfollowing or muting for a little bit, like, because so many times we're spending time just scrolling and then all these feelings are coming up. We're going so fast, we're not even processing it. But again, if we're noticing feelings of like comparison, jealousy, hating our bodies, like all of that stuff, if it's coming up, it's like, okay, I got to really, again, kind of take account of what I am watching and scrolling through and making sure it's healthy for me.
Yeah, and speaking of like body dysmorphia, like What would you
Mhm.
recommend for somebody who kind of struggles with that? I know for me, like it's been a struggle, sort of not my whole life, but I would say when I got serious about running, I would always be, comparing myself to other runners or being like, I'm too big, I'm too big, I'm too big. And then now that I'm joining rugby, I'm like the opposite. I'm like, I'm too small, I'm too small. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like,
Mm. I always suggest following accounts that are kind of more body positive or positive accounts in general. Maybe even finding accounts of, maybe it's a similar athlete that looks like you, or athletes in a sport that you really like or that's attainable to you. Because it's more realistic. Because again, most of the stuff we see on social media is so filtered. I mean, like honestly, those girls don't even look like that on like truly.
yeah,
So I think following more accounts that show like real bodies, real life, body positivity, athletics, like strength, and making that come up more in your feed. So it's less about like, okay, here's the 1% of the girls that might look like that versus like, okay, cool, this girl, she's like same body type as me, or like, look how strong she is. Like we can find those traits that we're like, okay, wow, I really admire that, as opposed to like, oh my God, I'm never going to look like that. Like, why do I look like this? So yeah, keeping that in mind.
I love that. Absolutely. I think I sort of tried to do that over the summer, and I did it like better than I usually have, and that actually helped a lot because I was looking at more athletic girls
Yep,
rather than more like Instagram models, if that makes
for
sense.
sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Great.
Thank you. Do you notice any like common misconceptions with people thinking things about therapy and mental health?
Yes, yes. Definitely there's still this stigma that like if you're in therapy, something is quote unquote wrong with you.
Mhm.
I will say like probably, there's nothing really like wrong with probably 95%, 99% of the people that I see in my practice are everyday human, normal people. We just all have our own struggles. And I always say like everyone can benefit from therapy. And going doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just like kind of sharpening your skills of thinking and planning and going through stuff. And that's why, like I said, the hardest thing to do is to keep all this stuff in. And that's what I think makes us physically sick, mentally sick, when we're just like bottling it in. And it's going to come out some way or another. It's going to come out as a panic attack or a crying session or, like yelling or anger. So therapy is really just for kind of giving you life skills to work through stuff. And God, it's just like such a great feeling just talking to someone who doesn't really have an opinion. They're not going to judge you. It stays there, like, because it's great venting to our friends or our mom or whatever, but just knowing that this person has no ties to you, it will never get back to anyone. You can be honest and blunt, and like it's the best feeling walking out of a session like, oh my gosh, it was so great to speak my truth.
Absolutely. And do you find like what can people sort of do if people in their life are judgmental
Mhm.
towards you if you go to therapy?
Yeah. I always say that people are honest to God going to judge you no matter what you do, whether you go to therapy or not, whether you dye your hair or not, whether you date this guy or not. Like they are going to judge you no matter what you do. It doesn't like truly. So I always say make the decisions that make you happy, because they're going to think things about you and judge what you can't make the right decision for everyone. So I always say just do what makes you happy, and also they are not living your life. Someone can call me purple, and I'd be like, okay, whatever, you can think I'm purple, that's fine. Yeah, only we are in charge of living our lives. We are the only one that gets a say in that. And yeah, the people are going to judge anyway, so I'm just going to do what kind of makes me happy and serves me best.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. That makes me, I know that I sometimes struggle with that where it's like, what can I do in order to help other people all the time? And of course, it's a give and a take. Sometimes it's good to help others,
Yeah.
but I think when it overconsumes you, it's just too much.
Yes, and you have to realize too, whose life are you living? Are you living your friend's life, your mom's life? Like we are not put here on this planet to like make our parents happy or make our friend happy or our boyfriend happy. Like that is not our job here. Our job is to kind of figure out our purpose in life and do what makes us feel fulfilled. And yeah, other people can say what they want, do what they want, but at the end of the day, they have their own life to live and kind of need to stay out of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And if do you have any advice for young people, old people, wherever they are in their life, whether you have different advice for different age groups, um, yeah, just whoever you think, like for those who are a little maybe afraid to seek therapy or those who are struggling a little bit in life where they're at.
Yeah, definitely. And I know going to therapy can be scary. I absolutely get that, especially if you've never been before. It's really weird to tell your deepest, darkest secrets to a stranger. And I always say that to my clients too. I'm like, the first session or two is going to be freaking weird. It's like the strangest experience. But when you have the right fit with a therapist, it's like, it truly is life changing. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in it myself. So I think if anyone's on the fence about going, it's like talking to a friend, but 10 times better because they're not going to be interjecting their own thoughts, or, they're not biased, they're not judgmental. We've literally heard everything. So it's, nothing really surprises us. So I think that's good. And again, there's lots of coping skills. One of my favorite things, and it's like kind of like my mantra in life, is that I can handle anything that comes my way. And I try to get other clients to have that as a mantra too, because many times we're like, oh God, I hope this doesn't happen, or I hope this does happen. And I try to teach people, that's probably my biggest tip is, that's fine if you want to like hope and pray and like all this stuff that something happens or doesn't happen. But I love living life with the attitude of I can handle whatever comes my way, because if something good happens, that's awesome. If something negative happens, okay, this is going to be terrible, but I can handle this. And I have a support system around me. And that's what we kind of help clients figure out, like, who is our support system. But I love, that's kind of like my mantra in life, and yeah, just kind of building myself up like that. So
I love that. Thank you so much. I
of
think you're
course.
super inspiring and super helpful. So I,
Thank
I
you.
really, I'm so glad I got to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks for thinking of me. And definitely, like I said, anytime I can kind of spread the word about therapy, and yeah, it's the best thing ever. I recommend everyone try it at least once in their life.
Yeah. And did you want to like plug your social medias? I definitely think people would benefit if
Sure.
they.
Yeah, so I am on Instagram at Kelly Houseman, and my blog, I haven't updated it in a while, but there's still lots of articles on there, lots about mental health and relationships, and that's kellyhouseman.com, Houseman. So yeah, kind of connect with me. You can read some articles, say hi on Instagram, and yeah, lots of stuff for people on there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks.